가장을 문제니 리송으로 가장 소로했고 소로 tembanyaja 고치에와 그 소로 tembanyaja 다 소와 코랑 몰라 때네 그는 소와 칸데스 춤도 따와이나 드네베나 류지 소로와디 류지 난 가반도 대신도 셈 소로와디 셈기지 방법이바 마음바 기지 등조강가 강도 돌내도 때네 따야디 되는 소와디 덴바 멤버 봉바이마 된수 쉐어 체도래
Donc, bonjour, nous avons hier
Yesterday, we spoke about mindfulness regarding the
la
sensations,
méditation sur
and we saw that we have to look at the very essence of a sensation.
Sensation.
By trying to find its essence, we see that sensations have no ultimate reality, and that their essence is emptiness. Once we are aware of the sensation, the process consists in asking questions. Is it located in us, outside of us, in the mind, in the body? Do they exist on their own? Does the sensation exist in time, in the first instant of being aware of it, in the second instant? We go through an analytical process in order to establish that there is no ultimate reality to be found concerning the sensations. Ultimately, they are nothing other than emptiness. Looking and analyzing the nature of sensations gives us insight into their true nature, their ultimate nature. There is really nothing substantially real about them. On a relative level, the nature of sensations can be defined as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral.
semla chowa dewa da dunga tanyum ta tela ya yi de ati yusha ra sem yi chowa dewa da chinda ranjin de dewa yi rung jure dunga dan che de bache yan jure dunga re tedar mina dewa ji na ya jure dunga re dunga tin dunga re ate sungza 대달 미나 네 두지지 동아리 그래서 동아 숨다 민자베랑 지지
Donc ça c'est cet examen nous permet
they are either pleasant or unpleasant, suffering or happiness. Some of these sensations are defined as physical and others as psychological or mental.
Cependant, concernant leur nature, les sensations peuvent être de nature agréable, neutre ou désagréable, de la nature de la souffrance ou de la douleur. L'on peut distinguer ainsi aussi les sensations qui sont, comme l'on a vu hier, d'ordre physique, c'est-à-dire éprouvées physiquement par nos sens, ou d'ordre psychique, éprouvées par l'esprit seulement. Quoi qu'il en soit, quelles que soient les sensations, en fait, sont de trois sortes dans leur nature, c'est-à-dire soit de l'ordre du plaisir, soit de l'ordre de la douleur, soit de l'ordre neutre, qui est ni plaisant, ni désagréable.
In any case, we can classify them as being pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Pleasant sensations, because they are impermanent, will be changing. They are ephemeral. And because of that, the well-being that one experiences one instant will eventually change and become suffering and end due to impermanence. Therefore, they belong to the category of suffering of change. The teaching on the Four Noble Truths explains that there are the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and existential suffering in premise. The painful sensations belong to the category of suffering of suffering. It is a quite obvious suffering. Since pleasant sensations are impermanent, they belong to the suffering of change. Painful sensations are obvious suffering, and the neutral are characterized by existential suffering. Seen in this light, there are no sensations, on the relative level, that do not imply one of these three sufferings.
Le mal-être inhérent. Donc les plaisirs sont caractérisés par le mal-être dû au changement. Les douleurs, les souffrances sont la souffrance donc caractérisée par le mal-être de la souffrance, et les instants neutres sont empreints et caractérisés par le mal-être inhérent. Donc en ce sens, il n'y a pas de sensation qui ne soit caractérisée par le mal-être. Non, mais donc le mal-être inhérent est présent constamment.
Existential suffering is always present.
C'est un mal-être extrêmement subtil.
But it's extremely subtle.
En ce sens,
if you take, for example, physical pleasure, you could say that there might be a pleasurable experience, even though we may not perceive any sort of suffering. These sensations are marked with an existential suffering. Take the example of lying down on a waterbed. As long as that experience is happening, and we haven't gone into the change, where it turns into suffering, even while we are experiencing pleasure, we have this subtle undertone of the existential suffering that we are generally not aware of. That is because we are grasping. For as long as there is grasping, there is suffering. If existential suffering was not present continuously, both on the physical and the psychological levels, then we would not experience the grosser levels of suffering.
Si le mal-être inhérent n'était pas présent constamment, ce mal-être subtil n'était pas présent constamment au niveau physique et psychique, alors aucune souffrance ne pourrait s'élever. C'est du fait que ce mal-être subtil est présent que d'autres souffrances.
It's because of this undertone of existential suffering that we become aware of the other forms of suffering.
Par exemple, pour reprendre l'exemple de
going back to lying on the waterbed, we might feel very comfortable and quite well, but that will pass. The pleasure doesn't last, and because it doesn't last, it is the suffering of change. It takes its root in existential suffering.
Après un instant, on ne l'éprouve plus. Il passe. Et le fait qu'il passe, c'est le mal-être dû au changement, à l'impermanence. Et cela advient du fait du mal-être inhérent.
the additional suffering, constant. Constant pain. Constant pain that constantly pain. You know? Such as like very painful sickness, if you have then constant pain.
Et donc le mal-être dit de la souffrance ou de la douleur.
There are forms of suffering that are blatant suffering, the suffering of suffering. This is the sensation of suffering and pain that we might feel constantly during an illness, for example. You may think that if this illness is healed and you get better, then that suffering will come to an end. At this point, we think that we will know well-being.
Et si cette, par exemple, maladie est guérie, donc on peut penser que la souffrance et les douleurs physiques s'estompent et on doit se retrouver dans un état alors de bien-être. Mais en fait, on n'est pas dans un état de bien-être.
But that's not true, because while that specific suffering will come to an end, there's always suffering right around the corner. A certain form of suffering is always present.
Persisting subtle suffering. Persisting subtle suffering.
Donc, on peut dire que le mal-être
existential suffering could be defined in English as persisting subtle suffering.
Extrêmement subtile et persistante qui est présent à chaque instant.
What do you think?
Qu'en pensez-vous?
Persisting subtle suffering. I don't know. Well, you all know, but Pamela White or Resha? Yeah? Persisting subtle suffering. It's okay, yeah? Why? Reason the Karasana. Tambo Dembrans Matche. Tal Ribode Manchwa the Lulu in the Yungure. Yina Chana Sem Koran for the Rodeo. Yinaya the superficial for Lulu in the Yungur. Luitella, the Dhagpo Kagyu Ling. Adopt completely mixed. When Jala Ravchi Yashavina, Koran Jala Ravchina, the Yin Samatan Marva. Tarundi somebody than the Jalan, the young gentleman. Tal Lubote Dachina, that's something, but Tambomania Savin Kunali send the Luni Yemi Jingjashini, Dabuja Sarva. This was the Luigi Dunhate, should check
Suffering is due to self-clinging or self-cherishing.
Ces sensations,
this habit is an innate habit that may go all the way back to our birth, to grasp that of a self and cherishing the self. There is this idea that we identify ourselves with the self, that it is who we are. That is how we can define our existence, through the self. The idea of the self is based on the existence of a body. The body is, the body exists.
Que ce moi et je est identique à notre constitution physique. Nous prenons notre corps pour ce moi. Donc c'est la saisie.
Grasping arises from the experience of this uneasiness.
Qui s'appuie lui-même sur l'idée que ce corps a une existence substantielle de par lui-même. Donc cette saisie est la fondation de l'expérience du mal-être. C'est différent, par exemple, de la saisie, de l'appropriation d'un objet extérieur à soi. Par exemple, on peut prendre une tasse et penser que c'est à moi. Mais nous éprouverons moins de souffrance à l'égard de cet objet s'il advenait quelque chose à cet objet, puisque on
It's a little bit different from taking an object and saying, this is mine. The suffering that we take from the object that is mine is not as great as the suffering of something happening to our bodies, because we are so closely identified with our body as being the self, or at least implicitly one of the major components of self. We don't even question this identification with physical form and self, and yet it is one of the very bases of suffering.
Tesidu lu Quran lu di anen lu nala tu yore lu ku changwa yore ne chodang chanyamba yore minyamba yore tene u yore u tungtung yore jingbo yore tesonza kale khaya yore yang suffocating chaya yore tene daga na shingi shadan chadan pakden ju yuni soranda minra sorwa chawa rakba shindu rakba namba nazoji kona nyongde yorda the 가르치는 용어들이 열었으나 their craving is completely grasped by the mind. 진대가 될 때는 디주 용어들이 샘 짜는 걸리고 코퍼레이트 동아 용나라 샘들 이미 증대신 샘들 다고자들이 진 루토네 초 상만 용어들이 so their permanent happiness on your mind.
Donc, le corps,
the physical body experiences all sorts of difficult things. It could be heat, cold, the way that we breathe, long breaths, short breaths. We could feel that we are suffocating. We can be tired. We can feel good. We can feel pleasure. There are all sorts of different sensations that are possible. Positive, negative, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, that we feel in our bodies at different levels, be it the flesh or internal organs. We may feel them on the skin, within the body. There's really a plethora of experiences that arise from this identification with the body. When we are talking about the identification with the body, we are talking about the mind identifying with the body as being the self or part of it. If there was a separation between mind and body, the body would be nothing more than a corpse. There wouldn't be any possibility to experience any pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations. But the fact that the mind is so closely identified and attached to the body is what gives rise to all sorts of physical and psychological experiences. This is why it is impossible for us to feel or have any sort of permanent happiness within this identification.
Identification à ce corps que nous éprouvons ces différentes sensations. Et c'est pourquoi l'on ne peut faire l'expérience d'un état de bien-être permanent.
So constantly you feel the feel of the physical form through the physical form. Yeah?
Constantly what?
Constantly you have a feeling of the physical form.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If your physical form is totally separated from mind, then you feel nothing through the physical form. So if there is not additional sufferings, if there is not additional kind of comfort, then you have a steady feeling, then you can check on that. If you check on that, then you will know, you will realize whether there is a persisting comfort or persisting heaviness. You can analyze on it. So that's one of the way how you analyze the feeling, whether there is a persisting happiness, comfort, or persisting happiness and discomfort. Okay.
Donc,
it is not that you have to be emphasized by thinking suffering. No. You have to realize the nature of the feeling.
Donc, pardon.
Sem rangi, set kang shugosare, pegya gosare. Beke ton shugosan.
Kosamari. Sonal.
Memi. Tanda di tanangi shitsavdir. Shitsavdir. Kansa lyg ton yong deba chorba.
Nasıl?
Lyg to ne tene junche mebe dewajisan yo mares.
Nasıl?
Sem di lyboda dagbo gyap chane zongde lü to ne junche mebe dewaji nyoya zan yo mare. Nasıl?
Nasıl?
Karzen sem de kona gonga bub na shi gonge bub neba na shi lü di dagbo gyap chane di to ne junche mebe dewazan nyoya yo mare. Kesi ki ji dewanda bu chenpu juye na ya tin juru yo re judu return to the 양자 양 고랑에메 고사데 미데와 디도 레디 차와 미데와 차와 디도 레디요레 동아 퇴바 중바이나 디 overwhelming sabr 레디 대당 차나야 야 내갑치 차르베기 대와지 뇽나야 야 디야 란자 디네 미데와 차와 미데와 디도 유도.
Alors, ici on peut examiner pour voir si il y a une sorte de bien-être
What we try to do with this is look at the body.
Constant.
The body does not remain in a state of perpetual or constant well-being. When we really see the body, we see that it does not remain in constant ease. We really need to observe. And when we don't notice any sensation particularly strong, are we truly in a state of well-being? We'll see that if we examine the nature, we find that we won't come across a state of perpetual well-being. Is it a sort of uneasiness? If we look, we see that there is a subtle uneasiness or discomfort which persists. It may be that we experience something pleasant. But will this pleasure last? No. It just passes through, leaving the place for what? For this subtle discomfort which is present. If, on the contrary, we experience an unpleasant sensation, a strong suffering, we might think that once this pain has dissipated, we will be much better off. But what really happens is that this neutral situation is also characterized by a subtle existential uneasiness. This is due to the fact that we so closely identify with this body. Our mind is somehow imprisoned by this body. It's almost the same thing as being imprisoned inside of an egg. We are, through this appropriation of the body, this conditioning, colored by a subtle uneasiness.
Si au contraire nous faisons l'expérience d'un état de douleur, de souffrance forte, on peut penser que lorsque cette douleur est dissipée, à ce moment-là, l'on va être amené à un état de bien-être. Or, on va voir que l'état neutre, en fait, est caractérisé par ce mal-être subtil, le mal-être inhérent, et cela est du fait que nous sommes associés à ce corps, comme comment dirais-je, notre esprit est comme emprisonné à l'intérieur de ce corps, comme une chose pourrait être emprisonnée à l'intérieur d'un œuf. Nous sommes en ce sens, par notre appropriation de ce corps, de cet état conditionné, amené sans cesse à être dans un état de malaise subtil.
Subtle persisting unhappiness to your suffering, or paved.
No, paved.
That's not like paved road like that. road level. Junchi yomaro. In Zimba de la Junchi Zan, Juns on a check in the one assembly, Jun, the Zimba de Nedi Yudu, Titella, freedoms on Yomar, Tigi, subtle unhappiness, said the freedoms on Yomar, sim.
Donc, quand on regarde,
we see that suffering comes from the grasping we generate. This grasping is constant. There is no discontinuity in the grasping, leaving no place for liberty. It is like a highway. You look at a paved highway, and it looks like it is completely continuous and uninterrupted. This is the grasping. The grasping just basically never lets up. That is the persistent, subtle suffering.
Continue. Et cette saisie continue ne laisse pas place à la liberté, au bien-être. Donc c'est cette saisie continue qui est en quelque sorte la fondation. Rinpoche a utilisé l'image d'une route, comment dirais-je, le goudron, comment dit-on, le soubassement de la route ou le pavement.
Là.
Non, fumée.
Oh, marée.
La soubassement.
Soubassement.
Non.
Soubassement de carré.
Tapen lamga tsawato.
Ah. Junche m'avait.
Non. Donc c'est comme le pavement d'une route qui est constant, continu. Donc c'est du fait de cette saisie d'appropriation continue qu'il y a ce mal-être, ce malaise subtil, constant.
Tati Zimba Junche m'avait ta tsoroarna. Zimba Junche m'avait là. Zimba Junche m'avait là. ane shiwa zan yo ma le shide chuni yo ma le te son zan tela chaban de ji dong ha sit.
Cette saisie subtile,
this subtle and constant grasping is characterized by agitation and not calm or peace. That is the inherent or existential suffering that is always present as long as there is any form of grasping or identification of the mind with sensation.
C'est cela qui est le mal-être inhérent. Le mal-être inhérent ou ce malaise inhérent est ce fait d'être cette agitation subtile de l'esprit, ce qui est le contraire de la paix ou la quiétude.
Tati zimbati rakbar. Zimbati tsama rakbar namto rakbar ha. Ti semji jun la zane minjalwa yoba yimba sonza te dela tene ane semla dewa yung yo ma le semla shidi yung yo ma semla shidi me yung du shidi me be semti lu danzin chebala tene ane lu ji juni jang additional suffering yung di yo kunyi chik la pa zu to chi yo semji lu dangu jab ta sem koran lan zimba yoba che ti chik la pa zu te chene chaban du ji dunga de bet temboru ne di
donc c'est
one is cause, one is condition. Sem Quran zimba chidwa. There is the cause. And semti lulun zinchi rang lui samben zin deba tel tene the chaban du dunga yu junche meba nebe kenchi
la saisie d'appropriation,
the mind that is grasping,
est une saisie
grasping itself,
qui,
or grasping at things, or
agitation, elle est
the mind is grasping. It is grasping itself, or grasping at things agitated.
L'esprit qui s'approprie en tant que
and because the mind is agitated, this agitation is continually present in its persistent subtle suffering, or existential suffering. It is essentially the cause of the experience of suffering. And since we have grasped at or identified with the body, and with things as being one's own, the suffering arises. And this is the cause of the suffering. Through this grasping, other sensations arise. For example, we might have physical pain, etc.
À ce que l'on s'approprie le corps, qu'on éprouve les sensations du corps, et du fait que l'on s'est approprié
the grasping of the mind is the cause for identifying with the body. Then the body serves, in a sense, as condition in order that the self-grasping continues. They are interdependent, mutually helping each other in perpetuating the experience of suffering.
Les deux, c'est-à-dire cette saisie de l'esprit qui est cause et s'appropriant le corps sert en ce sens de condition pour que la saisie de soi se perpétue. Donc ils s'entraident entre sens, ils sont interdépendants et s'aident mutuellement pour la perpétuation de l'expérience du mal-être.
Zimba rakpa de tamche ma shi tsasona zimba rakpa de tamche ma shini di shiwe ki neba la komsana de ta shine tembo shine da di shine di ki thola shine tarong ya shukchir koni kumpel tana katsi ina tana ko mijo meba sidwan katsi ane ina choyo 저 ngaran sontajina kom seya tinda uri mi komba zan meba komyo ta khansan tin zimba de ma shi din zimba rakba chaza ma shi tu yo ra ta zimba rakba de yongzo ma shi chadi ta shiwe ge nebe ge nyam tela ta shines kamji ya yo ta di ya compare de tondu tangbo tela compare de tang yongdu compared to Tambegi, Nyam Telatene, Tignon Telatene, Nyama, Messibi Yabushi, Shidevate, Rabachar.
Nonsense.
They are more mature Chadevati, Yan Chawachar. Kanda Duzuganga Zimba Rabba de my Shidu.
Nonsense. Alors, afin d'apaiser cette
in order to pacify this grasping, or the identification, first on the gross level, identifying the self as a physical self, we'll meditate, shamatha, or calm abiding meditation, also known as shine. By sitting and meditating, practicing, we exercise concentration. We will be able to pacify the agitation, the gross agitation of the mind. Then, progressively, we will be able to bring the mind to a certain degree of quietude or pacification. We will be able to have this experience of well-being because our inner agitation has been truly calmed down. But we can go further in pacifying the mind and cultivating quietude. In fact, you can always go further. You can continually go further in pacifying the mind. There are states of well-being that can be developed ad infinitum. It is always possible to go deeper and be more subtle, increasing our stability of mind. As one goes deeper and deeper into shine, the initial peace and well-being that was experienced actually seems quite gross. This first experience that we have acquired will seem like stability that can be fortified even further, and after, it will seem rather gross.
Va sembler être une stabilité au regard d'une stabilité encore améliorée, plus subtile, etc., paraître grossière.
Di ya shine ge za de zorim yim ten de la di che de la ngara che ja ne level ja yung de tin tangbo ni ba sumba jiwa da di to le tin shin du chawa de si ya ri sha di minji da de la zu kam se ha xie de wang da tin zu de ten ba ten lu ja min de lembe ten lu ja min de lembe de ten til zawa catch murege sem koragi di tse de la le me le di ji di nen ro de ne ji di ten ko ro ma ji di kora sem korang di shine ge za de ya zo rim shin do ne 당보 이바 숨바지와데 쳔티 돈로요. 디송자 다 당보데 야 레버드 마송 델레 차데 디 레버 디 토네 예마 레버디 라바토. 다 데네 레서소나 야 데 라바토. 디레스 야자.
Donc ainsi l'on délimite des différents
There are different levels of meditation, or rather, meditative absorption, that go along with the practice of shamatha, or calm abiding. We call it first, second, third, fourth levels of absorption, and so on. And it gets more and more subtle. Generally, in the teachings, this is associated with the different form realms. They are a kind of support or condition for existence. There are different conditions with existence, but this isn't what we need to look at. What we need to look at is the actual experience of the meditator. What takes place within the mind, and what level of quietude has been attained.
Donc c'est au niveau de l'esprit et du degré de quiétude qu'il a acquis. Donc, le premier degré de quiétude,
first, as we attain the first level of quietude, there is already a great deal of well-being. Then, when we go up a step, and we look back at what we have previously done, we realize that it was really quite limited, and quite gross, and really not very calm, not characterized by quietude. Each time you go up a step and you look back at what you have previously experienced, it seems very, very limited.
Et ainsi de suite à chaque degré. Il regarde le degré inférieur, il verra les défauts du degré inférieur.
신의 당보 레벨 당보 그라운드 루비용으로 봐. 디 ngaran스 뒤준데 ngaran스 미 남도 따윈 신도 되네 마지와 신도 마지와 마들로 그래서 아니 두제지 동아디 디 두제지 동아라고 시도 아니 일단에 디 신에 데라 아니 신도 시와인백이 냠데 냠용도 and here you get great satisfaction. So the upper you get great satisfaction, and lower you will see it is subtle. So you can go up to the limit.
Ainsi, lorsque l'on va progresser
beginners, we progress along the path of shamatha and attain a certain level of stability. Eventually, we get to the first level. When we get to the first of the dhyanas, or levels associated with shamatha, we look at how our ordinary mind was before we started meditating. We see that, and we see just how extremely agitated the mind was, how unhappy and how little well-being there was, because there was no pacification due to this existential suffering. It's just simply the nature of agitated mind. And we feel that we've achieved a level of quietude, a level of peace that we have never been able to experience before. Now, as we progress on this realization, we go higher and higher, or deeper and deeper. We get to the next degree in our experience.
On va être amené à arriver au deuxième degré.
When we get to the second degree of shamatha realization, then we look at the first level of experience, and we think, oh wow, look how agitated the mind was, or that it still seems characterized by agitation, and that well-being was not truly present. Better perhaps than ordinary existence, but nothing near to what one experiences as we go up the degrees of quietude that lead up to the highest degree of shamatha.
Ainsi de suite, plus l'on monte dans les degrés, l'on va voir que les degrés de quiétude que l'on a acquis auparavant n'étaient pas en fait tout à fait calmes.
Tene zone, te yan roya yoma. Ta tela tene sipi zemose, tenjue no, tarwa. Siba sequoia kansana, siba sena possibility. Jigdenji come karina si de yore. Then jigdenji come to the siba stash, va? Karasi was not bendini ya, never later. Shiwati. And there is that ne cons and roya yoma. Ta karicha was Zimbabwe shiku. Then Zimbabwe shiksa sona. Then tap sanji roya. This one's compared to our mind, the first level is great satisfaction, great peace, and then you will see our mind is totally overwhelmed by unpeace, suffering. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So when you reach the one of the upper level, from that, because you get us great satisfaction here, then from there, when you look at the first level, it is also rough. So you already explained,
yes.
But this is the how you
go. Donc, alors il y a dans cette progression différents, comme on a vu, différents.
There are different levels of stability within the mind, meditative stability or absorption. Sooner or later, we get to the perfection of this stability. We get to the top, to the summit, the highest point of meditative stability, and we can't go any further. In the text, this is what is known as the summit of conditioned existence. You can't go any higher than that, as far as pacification of the mind goes. Once you've reached that summit, it's important to loosen and get rid of all self-grasping. To get rid of any grasping of the self, or any grasping of well-being itself, other practices are necessary. In this case, we begin to meditate with the practices that are developed when we practice the sixth paramita, the wisdom paramita. These practices develop our understanding of emptiness and develop our discernment. Once we have developed this other aspect of meditation, which has allowed us to loosen and eventually eradicate all of the grasping of a self, grasping of happiness, of well-being, grasping of meditation itself, then liberation is possible. It is the second aspect that leads us to liberation.
Comme nous avons vu, chaque degré supérieur par rapport à son degré inférieur est un degré où la stabilisation de l'esprit est plus grande, plus calme, plus important. Et au regard de ce degré supérieur, l'expérience du degré inférieur paraîtra comme agitée, imparfait, etc.
di menga san lobjo ma je bi che te tanda di level tin zu kan ro de ge na mu tin ji ro sha di lo chewa mum cha san zo ya me ban ro de che zang tin ne tin de gom je tin de na sing gom ge ti shi ne gang shar ma ra ji chin sha di te za ne shi wa ha gu yo ma
ne san
shi wa ha gu me kan sa pung bu za 다 function 쇼와 계속 가서다 가서는 류기 체 조사다 류 내비 체 조사와 다 샘코나디 신에 가는 문제는 로데 디견다 줄 때네 안에 루보드 베트 마시부체 짝 function 상모 조사부체 안에 베트 마시부체 된데 내된 게 유스고
맞어
베트 세모들이 정보지 지에는 세모 예윈들에서 담샤요라 그 슈디요라 디기 세모드 디네 파시 잡로 디기 세모드 인데시 세모 주부담 셔스
나는서
다들 그가 찌 디네 마신 바 그냥 바 가사 칼 제신데 그래서 잔디네 마도 시제는 짜든 그가 이거 쓰기도
나는서 donc pardon
If nobody disturbed there.
D'accord. Alors, si l'on n'a pas étudié
if we haven't studied the meaning of selflessness and we haven't learned instructions that help us to eradicate self-clinging and grasping a self, if we were only interested in developing stability and meditative absorption, then we may arrive at this level of the summit of existence and experience great quietude and stay there. There are beings that dwell in this meditative quietude for thousands of centuries, or minds that stay there. These beings don't even see that they have died. Their minds are so pacified, they're in a state that is so subtle, that even if the body stops functioning, the mind stays put. Since the being is in such an advanced state of meditation, the body doesn't rot, it doesn't become putrefied. It just remains in meditation. So there's no corruption in the mind. It is said that their fingernails keep growing so that they begin to surround the body. As they sit in meditation, their fingernails continue growing to go around the back of their body. Their hair keeps growing, covering their entire body, as well as the whole room where they remain. If there's a fire, the body will be burned. Or if there's an earthquake, the body will be destroyed. But otherwise, the body stays in that state. For a long time, there's a sort of natural air conditioning that keeps it preserved.
La putréfaction. Et il demeure en méditation, il est dit que leurs ongles poussent si longs qu'ils entourent leur corps. Donc ils sont assis comme ça, les mains jointes en méditation, et leurs ongles poussent, vont jusque derrière leur dos, et leurs cheveux ont poussé très longs à couvrir tout leur corps et toute la pièce dans laquelle ils sont. Et
다치 의심을 쇼얼로다. 근데 차고 그잘 반도와.
No.
티마도 카라데네 딥 포레스트인데 나는 유디 데데 코디 네처 에어 컨디션 데 사박체이사.
Et évidemment, s'il y a un feu, le corps va être consumé. S'il y a un tremblement de terre ou des problèmes comme ça, le corps pourrait être détruit. Mais sinon, ce corps demeure comme ça intact.
Would you like to be like that?
Est-ce que vous avez envie d'être comme cela?
In the mind, the great satisfaction, great happiness.
Mais dans l'esprit, évidemment, cet être éprouve une très grande satisfaction, un très grand bien-être.
다 뒤쯤에 살와. 다 tellatene 까범 다 롤지야 메네루와. 야 간점스야 거니 이세루. 딘 짐바디 라디오와. 야 니세니야 야 confused 차루요. 딘 짐바 마시고.
Donc cette personne va demeurer ainsi pendant.
The mind stays like this for many years. But because the mechanism of very subtle clinging to a self persists, at one moment or another, the meditative absorption is going to come to an end. And once this comes to an end, the habitual confusion begins.
À un moment donné, cette concentration va s'épuiser, il va en sortir. Et quand il sort de cette concentration, eh bien la confusion habituelle reprend.
Unfortunate.
Malheureusement.
다한테 짐바티 식으로. 다한테라 삼천번 여셔서라. 짐바식이야 당화들. 다한테 봐도 소화와. 소화 맨 다들 알아서 가서 we are now talking about solar this shit there 마도 다 삼대 공개 telada 리 소화요 텔.
그래서
소화요. 소화된 두지 동아 유브.
그래서
다 샘천번 여자베게 되는 띵은 콤발라테네 되는 짐바티 식으로다. 된 짐바티 식으로인데 다 단다 대답이 시네 점을 랭긴 티긴 짐바 매베 띵은 공투 말해 이 말로와 레벨 티 공투래 짐바 매베 띵은
그래서
바로 괜찮아요 장 공투고요 레벨 티 다 점을시도 하나 이 시네들 톱사나 unfortunate 티 짐바 매베 띵은 공 말자 하면서 코벳 ni shosa ta dina ngarazu ni shoba na ji shoryo mare dina ta dina simsa.
Donc il nous faut donc malheureusement enfin, ces personnes qui vont amener à ce
beings that arrive at this summit of meditation and dwell in that meditation for many years eventually, because they haven't been able to completely eliminate grasping or clinging to a self,
du fait qu'il n'ait pas éliminé la saisie de soi,
cannot become completely liberated from conditioned existence, which is unfortunate.
Dont nous avons parlé là jusqu'à présent.
The subject of this weekend is the 4 applications of mindfulness, and we've been talking about sensations. The application of mindfulness regarding sensations, to be able to untie this knot of grasping, leads us to the third of 4 applications, the application of mindfulness to the mind itself. These beings, these people who are in the state of meditative absorption, still feel some sensation at a very subtle level, and there is still, at the very highest degree, an extremely subtle existential suffering. Once again, because there is still this clinging to a self, again, at a very subtle level. It is possible to eradicate this at the lower levels, actually, of meditative absorption. It becomes more and more difficult the higher you climb. Once you have reached, for example, the summit of existence, it is not possible to cultivate the meditation that will allow us to eradicate self-clinging, because it is as if we are in a sort of dream or sleep, and we don't know it. It's not like the kind of dream or sleep that we experience. It's a very subtle dream state, and we're completely immersed in it, identified with it.
C'est-à-dire lors des premiers degrés de la réalisation de la quiétude ou au degré moyen, etc. Si l'on arrive à ce stade qu'on appelle le sommet de l'existence dont on a parlé tout à l'heure, on ne peut pas alors, dans cet état, cultiver une méditation qui nous défait de la saisie de soi, puisque dans cet état, on est comme dans une sorte de sommeil. Il ne s'agit évidemment pas du sommeil habituel que nous connaissons, c'est-à-dire que l'on est tellement, engagé dans cette quiétude extrêmement subtile que on en est en quelque sorte complètement immergé dans cet état. Non.
Increasing the improvement level is yawachi. Semu seba chocho si che the usual one. Mazu tinzu ti na rogu mare da. Ta khangtar tanang ita shegyor da. Ta suluju che. Khangtar ta nganzu da mebe tingze gomni ya tsamul heba yina. Ta tanda shine ang thangbu tsamu jidwa.
No.
Tsamu jilegwa. Ti samla ma ta du raba thong yo. Kala sanan duje jidunga la di taru.
So. Dami gombe kap.
Dami gombe tingz drup chadi. Anda ngaranz dami gomba na ji semenda.
Naso.
Da mebe tingz zimba mebe tingz drup yundu.
Naso.
Ti ma ta du tanda step shine nan ta level number 1 ta tel ha mebe tingan le yor ba. Ti sem tel ma ta du ko de raba thong yor.
Naso.
Ma jiwa.
Pour celui donc qui
the practitioner that is going to loosen the grasping to a self will follow a path of realization. There are different paths to Buddhahood, beginning with the path of accumulation, junction, etc. There are 4 levels, known as heat, peak, patience, and supreme dharma. But without going into the details of all this, we can see that as we go up the different levels of realization of non-self, the practitioner will have different experiences, such as the summit of existence. And for the practitioner, even this level, in connection with Shine practice, seems like a very gross and undesirable level of attainment, still characterized by inherent uneasiness.
Si l'on arrive à la réalisation du non-soi, celui qui réalise le non-soi, lorsqu'il va examiner l'expérience dont on a parlé du sommet de l'existence, cela va lui paraître comme une expérience extrêmement grossière, encore caractérisée par le mal-être inhérent.
가라앉은 두지에 동하디 민용와 말에 용되기요. 하고요 말. 대선자 아니 줄에 동할 때야 매 동할지 동하대 매리도 다롱이야. 세바기버 매잔한테 지 초다고 근데 뷰 첨부 근데 강박이 하는 페나샤지 대 정말 딱 동안. 잔소 칸다보다 근데 강 데는 걔네 시비다 디 페나샤 디팅걸 된 다른 페로 지금 왔어. 누지지 동안 외대요라. 페로 미지 제 강박기 부잡나 마페 간체나 마페 때 아니 가슴술가만 처음 시작하는 것도 제하면 와. 뒤를 해야겠다. 뒤에도 용이 하고요 말아마도 용대요 그런지. 오버빌림 차리.
Le mal-être inhérent dont on a parlé.
While we are probably not aware of inherent uneasiness, we always feel it. For example, when we are not experiencing a specific kind of pain, we are not aware of the subtle suffering. When we are not experiencing the suffering of change blatantly, we are not aware, but there is always a subtle suffering that is present. For example, we like to go to places that seem pleasant, and we like to visit maybe the ocean, where the landscape is beautiful. We feel good about it. There is a well-being that goes along with that. Why do we do that? Because in our natural state, if we look more closely, even if we are feeling generally pretty good, and there is a sense of well-being, there is subtle, persistent, existential suffering that is present. In order to get rid of this inherent uneasiness, we try, some way or another, to create a feeling of well-being. Let's say we're going to build a house by the sea, or anything else that we think is going to bring us lasting happiness. But it cannot do so, because there's always this underlying suffering that is present, which will invariably resurface. At one point or another, it will erupt and evolve into other forms of more blatant suffering. And you may have built your house, and you think you should be feeling just wonderful. But actually, you get to a point where the suffering is so present, and you become aware that the only solution is to jump out of the window of your lovely house by the sea.
Non.
This is the only solution.
Et le fait de se jeter comme ça nous apparaît dans le vide.
It seems like the only solution.
Faisons-nous parce que cela nous apparaît comme étant la seule solution. Non. Celui qui ne
And if you don't jump out of the window, it's because you still have some hope.
Pourquoi ne le fait-il pas? C'est parce qu'il a encore de l'espoir. Oui. Celui qui pratique shamatha, qui est arrivé à ces différents degrés de réalisation shamatha, eux, ils ne sauteront jamais.
If you cultivate these different levels of meditation, you won't jump.
Bien sûr.
Complete deepest part of the peace gan de orwa
no
ki gan dratsi de ben ta de re min du se ko tsiba sa yor se du
asa re min du se de me tup sa
me ta nga ni se orwa ti se zo so ba
ale
se zo ta par du te be ya bu shi bu chong orwa
no
ta be nga ran de ga ran yin sam che de ta ran gan ya pe great satisfaction can't day or suddenly you wake up from it, then you will be so angry. There's a problem. That is, shine madu mandubna siyor. This was a civic in the Jinya Hong Said. That is the shake women. That some the Kansa Saba maybe things in the manner they could say Zoro. Then you will be confused again, then you yourself will angry so badly. Ti mado ti pardola zane chomjaji magasa gigunalma chomgor zan shineti.
Donc, lorsque l'on médite comme ça dans le...
As we meditate like this, in a state of quietude, we have no need of jumping, because we are actually feeling quite good about things. There is a real well-being that arises through the state of absorption and quietude. But if we are stuck in this quietude, we don't develop discernment or wisdom with which we can eradicate self-grasping. Then the karma that makes this quietude possible is going to be used up. And it's like you wake up from a sleep or from a very pleasant dream. We have left the state of quietude or pacification, and in fact, the stability has come to an end. We can't rely on it anymore. Time has run out. There's a great deal of dissatisfaction that arises when we realize that we can no longer rely on this state of meditative absorption. We're disappointed, and this can irritate us, making us angry, or making us feel aggressive about it. We can even feel hate arise out of this disappointment.
Sorte de déception qui s'élève et qui peut mener à ce que l'on soit énervé et les afflictions telles que la haine s'élèvent de ce fait.
Sam di tandang tanda shia tenso ngara abidama nala ting di something tenso la kurim ming ta shayor. In order to understand clearly the something thambo iba sumba jiva. Ane tine ti thola zoomé chenchi mushis. Ye tims abidama.
Dans les abhidharmas bouddhiques,
in the Buddhist Abhidharma, different labels have been put on these different levels of meditative absorption. They have names such as the first, second, third, and fourth dhyanas, then the four formless or immaterial ayatanas.
Dhyana, troisième, quatrième dhyana, puis les 4 ayatanas sans forme ou immatériel. Ces différentes dhyana ou absorptions méditatives peuvent être réalisées, développées dans notre condition humaine. Et ensuite,
it's just confusing. The Künzig class chance of sharing.
Donc, il y a les 4
4 dhyanas can be realized in human condition. And then there are 4 worlds characterized by subtle components and 4 immaterial worlds. Each of these worlds characterized by subtle components has 3 different destinies, and altogether there are 17 of these. Above the form realm, there are 5 pure realms, which are the Arhat realms, for accomplished Shravakayana pratitioners.
Donc, qui correspond à ces 4
We won't go into details about this because it's very complicated. But those who are interested can study the gateway to knowledge.
De destinée, il y a 3 destinées. Et donc, il y a, on parle de 17 différentes destinées. Au-dessus des destinées du monde de la forme, il est question de 5 étages dits purs, qui sont en fait des étages uniquement des arhats, donc des Shravakas réalisés. Donc je ne vais pas rentrer dans le détail de tous ces noms, ça ne fera que ça ne sera que compliqué pour vous, mais en revanche pour ceux d'entre vous qui étudiez le Künzig, il est important de les connaître.
다 사바메베 띵은진 곰네 상메기 띵은진 응원도 줄 용두 아니 단다 신의 점무 삼된 당보다 뢰니 바다 뢰스마지 줌이 텐솔라야 돼 라바 통요 두제기 동아 통요
그래서
두지 동아
그래서
heaviness 쉐 대선자 배장도아 사바메베 띵은진 응원도 줄서와 디마 단다 신의 something 그래서 something 줌메베 띵은지 신도 차와 신도 시와 디기 섬을 따용도 아니 시다 라과 heaviness you know dullness heaviness 지기요
그래서 something 간딘
상메 띵은지 something 탐시
남았어
대선자 파과 미단다와이 누제라는 동화지 쓰노 지발라 틀자와 인두제 동할 뿐미도 쓰노 때는 나란소 단다 카라 데디디 동할 담민다 오버웰림 체대자 드니 뒤균도 안 셈기 끼직을 대화자는 매바데 하고요 말 배나 부충충 질라관나는原来 하고 말봐
no
다 동화에서 강가 파 매바 체티 유럽의 동화다 동화에서 강가 짜는 매바래 쳐도 하고요
no
나란소 셰용도아 다 신의 야군 루창게 디기 취다용의 양 오마데 베나 미기단 분주가 나시 셰게 다 고마 야안도 오마데 미기단 분주가 나시 셰게 그러나 코라 미게 오마티가 네데베칼로 디 코라기 디 마지와디 셰게요 말 그래서 다 사바 메비딩은 증문도 출차별 까블라 딩이순 지베기 선을 마다 닝지 예베기 선을 마다 상만 마지와 이 셰게 ben mignal punzuga na shi shege yoris
yes
inji ti mignal punzuga na shi tini ishe meshe mignal punzuro eji tayo marda ta tinje te mata du tene ni tu tinje chadi yoris
donc pour le pratiquant qui réalise
for the practitioner who realizes this meditative absorption that is not contaminated by afflictions, that is without dualistic clinging of self and other, then it is with this realization that any sort of meditative absorption that is still based on dualistic clinging is recognized as being not quiet, not peaceful, but characterized by agitation, because it is possible for those who have realized this highest level without grasping to see that at another level, even the highest level, if there is grasping, the meditation is incomplete, and there continues to be dissatisfaction and suffering that go along with that. It is a very subtle suffering. And there's an example that can illustrate this for those of us ordinary beings who are always confronted with suffering, be it physical pain, mental pain, as well as the suffering of change and permanence. We are essentially not aware of this existential suffering because it is so subtle. It is much more subtle than the other forms of suffering that we are aware of. But those who have eliminated this blatant suffering and the suffering of change are aware of existential suffering. The example that is often given is the example of a strand of hair in the palm of the hand. Ordinary beings don't feel it. You may not even be
au
aware of
mal-être
it.
dû au changement,
But for realized beings,
nature éphémère
this
des
is like
phénomènes,
the subtle suffering,
le
and it
mal-être
feels to
inhérent,
them as a very blatant
on
kind
n'en
of
a
suffering,
quasiment pas
as though this
conscience.
same piece of hair is in the eye.
Mais pour ceux
It is that
qui
painful.
se sont
Those who
libérés
are
du
Arya,
mal-être,
the noble
de la douleur
ones,
physique
who have
et
eradicated
de la
dualistic
douleur due au
clinging
changement,
to a self,
eux
are
réalisent
able to
le
recognize it.
mal-être, enfin, reconnaissent,
Even those who are at the
reconnaissent
highest level
le
of meditative
mal-être
absorption, as long as there
inhérent.
is still dualistic clinging, they are
Et
still subject to
l'image, c'est
this
comme,
most
par
subtle
exemple,
form of suffering.
un poil dans le creux de sa main. Pour les êtres ordinaires, le mal-être inhérent est comme un poil dans le creux de la main, on ne le sent pas. Mais pour un maître réalisé, c'est comme un poil dans l'œil, il le sent, il le reconnaît, il le voit. Dans cette image est utilisée. Et donc pour les Arya, les maîtres réalisés qui se sont défaits de la saisie dualiste, toutes les expériences d'absorption méditative qui se basent sur la saisie dualiste, tous sont caractérisés par un mal-être inhérent.
Tadu milareba chidi yores. Milarebe zidin koop chidi yores. Sete yores. Ngam koope milareba tadu namza yabu chuya yo marwa.
No.
Namza chuya mewe shini igi yu yorwa.
No.
Tichi milareba chidi yores. Milarebe ma zidin koop chidi yores. Tirita. Karu chudi nganzu sambati shiwa yo. Tendu dewe ki tabata togo yo. nganzu melareba tadu tulo khya me thongyo gari yo mare khage yo mare chuzo kolota yo mare khage yo namza chya yo mare sister le indula namza ya bu chya yo mare tesundi mistake da thongyo ra khong nganzu ro semjin tamji semla tendu dibe tabar me thongyo.
Il y a un proverbe, enfin un dicton tibétain qui dit
There's a Tibetan saying. According to ordinary beings in samsara, the wise Milarepa lives in delusion. And according to Milarepa, ordinary beings in samsara are in delusion. As ordinary beings in samsara, you look at Milarepa, living in a cave, eating almost nothing. He has no clothing, no car, no watch or clock. He is completely detached from everything. So that even when his sister comes to visit him in the cave, he has nothing to wear, and he essentially lives naked. But when Milarepa looks at beings in the different worlds, he sees that their minds are never in peace. Ordinary beings are constantly dealing with their agitation, their suffering, and pain.
Que même lorsque sa sœur vient lui rendre visite, il n'a quasiment rien à se mettre sur le dos, il vit presque quasiment dans la nudité. Mais au regard de Milarepa, c'est bien tous les êtres sensibles qui sont dans l'écartement, puisque leur esprit ne connaît jamais la quiétude, le bien-être. Ils sont constamment sous l'emprise de l'agitation de l'esprit et sous l'emprise du mal-être.
What do you think?
Qu'en pensez-vous?
Who is wrong?
Qui a raison et qui a tort?
No, you don't have to think Milarepa is great. But you just follow the nature condition. Who is wrong? Tell me.
Je vous demande pas de penser que
Who is more suffering?
Je ne vous demande pas de penser que Milarepa est extraordinaire. Qui, selon vous, d'après votre propre jugement et bon sens, qui, selon vous, souffre plus?
Maybe he is more suffering because he does not have good soup to eat.
Peut-être c'est lui qui souffre plus parce qu'il n'a pas de bonne soupe.
You know, he had the nettle soup. He always depends on nettle soup. Not bourguignon. not French onion soup, yeah?
Il n'avait il prenait qu'une soupe d'ortie, sans assaisonnement. Ce n'était pas le bœuf bourguignon soupe à l'oignon en français, ils n'avaient pas ça.
다 사과 매백이 띵은 진지 어느 샘 전반이 어르자보다 쉬어 전반이 어르자보니 돈이 공대.
Donc
the unconditioned,
la samadhi
the uncontaminated or non-dualistic samadhi, or meditative absorption, is developed through the application of mindfulness on mind and phenomena.
샘 전반이 어르자보디 돈이 네 사과 매백 띵은지 주변 림바단 뛰네 아니 쉬어 전반이 어르자보기 그런 드부도 토용. 그래서 대야 찍을 찍대.
Ces deux placements de
These
l'attention
last two of the four are connected because by looking at the nature of mind, you naturally look at nature of phenomena, and vice versa.
On vient à contempler la nature véritable des phénomènes.
샘 전반이 어르자보디 진배 샘 내수 시베 치도래. 쉬어 전반이 어르자보디 중의 율지 내수 시베 치도.
Donc le placement de l'attention sur l'esprit et
applying mindfulness on the mind leads us to recognize the nature of mind, that is grasping phenomena. Placing the mind on phenomena allows us to have an understanding of the true nature of the objects that are being grasped by the mind.
De prendre connaissance de la nature des phénomènes que l'esprit saisit.
진배 샘 내수 시에는 진배 샘 뇨자 상교요. 진배 샘 뇨자 상토는 지중의 유교요다 랑쇼 상도.
Si l'on connaît la
If we know the nature of mind that grasps, we will be able to eliminate the problems of the grasping mind. If we eliminate the problems that are connected to the mind that grasps, then we will naturally eliminate any problems connected to phenomena that have been grasped at.
Des phénomènes qui sont saisis par l'esprit.
Okay, so dichidu ta thangbo shine yang thaba junruba che. 신의 땐체든 신의 양탑은 룹차외기 제라 신의 디토네 다랑게 셈기 윤라 focus 셈토 수장.
Donc une fois que l'on a acquis une
we
stabilité
begin
de
by
l'esprit
developing stability of mind through shamatha. Once it becomes stable and we are quite comfortable in it, we begin to observe the mind stream itself and the different moments of awareness in the mind stream.
De l'esprit, c'est-à-dire l'esprit va se tourner sur lui-même et va observer le continuum de l'esprit.
다 셈토 수상의 단위인데 셈대 전바 매바 비살과 자는 되게 말. 기지지전 되게 말. 배나 율진바다 민진바 나서 용시. 율 만지네 셈코라 셈레데르 마도 율 만지가블 시소 말. 단다 뉴로사이언스 쓰세나 electronic the concept cerebral cortex cerebral cortex okay that you zimbabwe perceiving the electronically you contacted then the message level then you understood something right yeah that manzim backup there la sem ne yor ma the sem me karju potato shogo the red mare lansa ngoti shogo hedu marwa
no
shogo ndajin semyo marwa potato la
no
yun zibe kawla brain che manzi be kawla potato ribe marwa
no
teso za neuroscience che ke samna de ma ting jing bu ne su ro thu ndo
no so
neuroscience
no
sem de kora jinche me ba ne de do sar sheba
no so
ye potato se ya kan so potato ya conscious yo marwa nganzo conscious yo conscious de junji minwa.
Donc
mind is characterized by its ability to be aware. It is described as a sort of luminosity. It is possible for the mind to experience, to know. But these qualities don't mean that we have to be constantly aware of something or conscious of something. It seems neuroscience describes the mind as something that is always aware of something. But actually, the mind can continue without being aware of something. It doesn't mean that the mind itself ceases to express itself. It doesn't mean that there is no more mind. The mind doesn't become a potato just because we are not aware of something. Our head or our brain doesn't become a potato. The potato experience is nothing because there is no mind. But the vision of neuroscience, having the mind as something always aware of something, is a limited understanding of what the mind is and how it functions. It can be aware of something exterior or not. It is not necessarily aware of something at every instant.
Notre cerveau ne devient pas une pomme de terre. Une pomme de terre ne fait l'expérience de rien. Cela n'arrive pas. Là, donc il semblerait que cette vision-là de l'esprit comme étant toujours conscient de quelque chose soit une compréhension limitée de ce que c'est que l'esprit. L'esprit peut être conscient de choses et de phénomènes extérieurs ou pas. Il peut être dans un état qui n'est pas forcément conscient, mais ça ne veut pas dire qu'en tant que réalité, il cesse.
Ok. Tanda, tikangjangi.
D'accord.
Chiroshi. Timadaya, chenzokan de mantra.
Donc on va faire une pause
We'll
là
stop
pour
here
ce
for the
matin.
morning and continue this afternoon. Otherwise, it will be too
cet
much.
après-midi. Je pense sinon ça fera un peu trop pour vous assimiler.
Am I right?
Est-ce que j'ai
Overloading to your brain. No? Huh? Oginyo, please have it. Okay? Consider. Question. Maybe they think, oh, I have to ask. The Rinpoche didn't give chance to ask. They ever think that.
Avez-vous des questions, peut-être?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Rinpoche. Can we escape from those different steps of... en français, pardon, excuse-moi. Est-ce qu'on peut s'échapper? Est-ce qu'on peut éviter? Est-ce qu'on peut plutôt ne pas faire toutes les différentes étapes du calme mental et en quelque sorte court-circuiter?
Can we escape all the different steps or avoid having to go through all the different levels and go directly into the realization of mind? Is it really necessary, or can we accelerate the process and go directly to the realization of mind?
Monkey-minded.
On ne peut pas.
No, it is not possible to directly proceed into Vipassana meditation.
On ne peut pas directement.
We can't go directly to Vipassana to develop discernment without having gone through the mental stability of shamatha. Our mind is like a monkey, leaping in every direction with constant agitation. An agitated mind cannot cultivate discernment or wisdom.
Le discernement.
Rinpoche expliquait qu'il y avait une nécessité de s'entraîner.
Rinpoche explained that we need to cultivate shamatha and the qualities of vigilance and mindfulness. I've heard several teachings on this. I'd like him to talk more specifically about these two qualities.
Quality chechu intenti inchimichi chenshie tan den bachi correspondos ni chetan chenshie konyon de tini te kanji le ngusung kuris chembase ba te
shine gombe kabla namdo yingro de hakoto de sheshin sigre
naso
an lamsa namdo te la handle chetan chorda
naso
kandis handle chugu yudi ti dama lagudwa
no
Bena handle che ma she na ta nam do ga control la yan da bu de yu che na de yo ma
naso
de son nam do de handle che ni chu yembo remedy use chakante ji menga ti damwa da masona tap kari but lamsan chen go.
D'accord. La vigilance, c'est...
So these two qualities. The first quality of vigilance means to be aware of what is going on within the mind stream. As soon as a distraction arises, that we are aware of that. Awareness is what we mean by the first of these qualities, vigilance. As for the second quality, that of mindfulness, it means that as soon as we are aware of something, we have to recognize what to do about it. We are going to apply the remedy. It deals with how we need to behave in light of this distraction. Mindfulness is linked to applying a remedy to a distraction. The first stage is awareness, and the second is applying the remedy. To become irritated and annoyed won't help us dispel the distraction. There are precise instructions as to how to behave with the distractions. So mindfulness is about immediately remembering the precise antidote that one has to apply.
De l'antidote précis qu'il faut appliquer, qui est la souvenance.
J'ai une question par rapport à la souffrance du changement.
When talking about the suffering of change, it seems to me that there are two. One is a pleasant experience, which is going to end one way or another. Taking Rinpoche's example of a comfortable bed, the comfort ends. But also, according to Rinpoche, is the accompanying suffering present and inherent at the time of the pleasant experience. Meaning, is it in the pleasant experience or at the end of the pleasant experience that we experience the suffering of change?
On se sent bien, mais cette sensation de bien ne va pas durer tout le temps pendant qu'on est allongé. Est-ce que j'ai bien compris?
일단 주르베 동알 소야 치어발라티 과디 칸딜링구리스 페나 단다 rum치 페치 손손 생각한서 아발란도 데보치간마 니아비나 tini ti nyebe kaptela dewe sorwachi yori tini pernata palantini ya langbaina dewe sorwati nyamdroba tindi jila kogiream
nyede naso yo
naso
yu dunga naso yo tanda karango manana tanda naiwa
en fait en fait il y a
in fact there are many different kinds of suffering of change. It is not one thing, as you say, but two cases, as you say. For example, right now, I don't have a headache, but tomorrow, I might have a headache. And this too belongs to the suffering of change. It means that you can't rely on anything to last, and that is the suffering of change. Absolutely any pleasant state is unreliable because it will change. Suffering of change is also, for example, sometimes people on the highway go really fast and then all of a sudden there's an accident and they might be in horrible suffering.
Souffrance due au changement, c'est, par exemple, petit exemple, il y a des gens qui sont sur l'autoroute, qui conduisent très 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 vite, soudainement, ils sont dans un accident, leur tête casse, ils sont dans des atroces souffrances, c'est dû au changement.
First you are comfortably driving, and then bang, then wow. Okay, yeah.
Rinpoche, dans ma vie présente, à l'instant présent, je voulais
right here, right now, I'd like to tell you about what it is I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing change and impermanence. When I was young, I had more energy. I noticed that I felt I had some lucidity in my practice, and maybe some
J'avais la
progression.
lucidité, la
Well,
vigilance.
now getting
Et
older,
là, en
I really
vieillissant,
feel
il y a
more
la
suffering,
souffrance,
constant
donc des
aches and
douleurs dont
pains
vous
that you
parliez
spoke of.
constamment.
And so I do
Et
Tonglen, where I
ce que je
recite the
fais,
mantra
alors,
of compassion.
soit je fais
But I
Tonglen,
feel
soit
quite
je récite
irritated
le mantra de la
sometimes when I do that.
compassion. Mais
There's an
il y a un moment
irritation.
donné, j'ai l'impression que
I feel
physiquement, il y a une
irritated, and I might
irritation
think, that's great, I hadn't seen it before.
par rapport à ça.
But now I do see it.
Je découvre que je
So
suis
that's great
irritée.
compared to the mind I had younger with more energy.
Donc je me dis,
So
tant
I say to
mieux,
myself,
je l'avais
do
pas
what you
vu,
can.
maintenant je la
But
vois.
recently I feel really
Par
irritated
rapport
about
à
it.
l'esprit
I've got
qui
all
compare,
sorts
avant
of
t'étais jeune,
great
plein
emotions of
d'énergie,
suffering.
maintenant tu
And I
l'es moins.
thought, this is
Donc
great.
fais ce que tu
But
peux,
it's hard
mais il y a
to
quand même
handle.
cette irritation qui
So I
sort.
recite the
Il y
mantras
a même
some
des
more.
très
I try to
grosses
do
émotions
Tonglen.
qui récemment sont
So
sorties.
I don't know if
de
I should keep
souffrance.
doing what it is I'm doing
Donc
as far as
je me
practice
suis dit,
goes.
je dis
I no
bravo,
longer have that
bravo
much
parce
time
que
to
ça
sit.
sort. Mais des fois c'est très très dur à endurer, donc je récite le mantra, j'essaie de faire Tonglen, vous voyez. Alors je sais pas très bien si c'est juste ce que je fais, parce que j'ai plus le temps vraiment de m'asseoir.
D'accord. Tini tanda morang gni tang korchi shuya yin isirwa morang tensa ta lotos ya getsa du morang lo chung du kam na shin subo devo ta tenji mindus tini gom nyamlen de chego na ya rumbuchi ki tagin sung sung midya ten sangman ma wala shar tini kap te pe kongro sa tsikpa sa tenji chigdus tini tenji redu kap la ya tini ta tenso ngoche ya wure sam tini tonglen ra kom tini ha ra rang tenji chigyus ina moran chitang de tenji rang chegori inam de member room chika samjan dan aya yunas
ko mare dan chan la batara chide ya donle comme mani de jere zup de ranjix.
No, continuez comme vous faites,
So
continuez.
just keep with your practice. Keep doing Tonglen, Shine, and Chenrezi.
Rinpoche, s'il vous plaît. Tout à l'heure, vous avez dit que dans les grands états...
In the gateway to knowledge, it says that if the mind is in a certain state, death is not
on peut ne
possible,
pas se voir mourir.
in that the mind is not capable of moving
Je
on.
voulais vous demander la
Can you
différence avec
clarify
ce que
this
vous avez
point?
dit il y a un jour ou deux, où disant que si l'esprit est centré en un point ou dans des états particuliers de concentration, de contemplation, la mort était impossible. Il fallait d'abord en sortir pour pouvoir mourir. Alors, est-ce que j'ai mal compris? C'est pas les mêmes cas? Merci.
Que tring son spenna tingin le ninkin ganza tenso koran zu chigyu yoba ya chorgu mari son tring ya kasan kinju kabla rumchi ge tingin le nepati chia yo mari son tini ganda marves
tingezi shirunge de ko
no
me shiame tarwato kandes
tantri kasan
kaneshi in the things in shigama sus kaneshi
kinju kabla tsichik nepatang se shuba tsichik nepati
tsichik sitse
tingin nyamsha tsichik nepasin sargo
kanai tendeshi sanje san shigama ma yin parcho shigyo da shon kane kos
maji tingin le nepi kaptila tini tindishi yabi imbayu kandichi 시시 감이
me tanda zubu shiru yoro
no
te ko shigime do sante nedi
no
ya che tangi di semoring bu cha che siding joro
no til tikaptela
se dosa
no se zo tsine kwan zule se zo ba ge tsara yungu mari
yo ma
so de tsara yo mari ba
ma
tini ta chwati rindu tini tingin ne yona tini
tingezi mare something
some no
shine
no shine something ne bati che yo mari si kinju na
shine tsama mare da something tanda ngarazu 당고 이바 숨바타 된주나야 베 준시 메베 내로 쇼르바
no
된주 신이
나서
신이 탄다 고마 상대 고마 숙심 토청게 줘르바
나리
탄다 유미미미 줌미 젠제라고 된는 룩사르다
나리
봄사르다
나리
그 삼바티 나온 로사르다 zubu 좋아요 zubu 시와 하고요
Oui. Ils n'ont pas, c'est pas tous les états de méditatif.
It's not all different states of meditative absorption. It talks about a meditative stability. When there is a complete experience of meditative stability and absorption, then they don't feel the sensation of death of their body when they die. There is a sort of sensation in this way.
Ils sont dans une sorte d'état de cessation.
Not everyone like that, but that particular person.
Bah, tout le monde, ces personnes en particulier.
띵은진다 something card.
그래서
this card 띵은시야 고마고마를 띵은지 주마다고 띵은지 파워도 띵은지 도시다고 띵은지 세야도 띵은지 봐.
moi tu vois kinjunal sechik ne pata sechik yu kan masite mari sem sechik du ne pe kansa ti chi mari se ashi
kana yoyin sem sechik ne kansa koran zubushi me sechik kayo zubushi singede zubolun do ba
nari
sem shiri de keyo mar
no
sem shiri singede zubushi wasing
parce la mort
sem sechik de ne kansa ti zubu shi me sechik kayo
pardu nandro mandu kiri kiri chinza.
Pardu nandro man yende ko ba?
Non.
Yendan ro re.
Voilà.
Yende ko. Sebji ne ba yabo top de yena yan ro.
Voilà, la mort ça ne se produit pas pour l'esprit, c'est pour le corps.
Death has nothing to do with the mind. It has to do with the body. Death is the body which stops functioning. For these beings that are in the state of absolute stability, their mind stays there, in this state of meditative absorption.
Many different practitioners. We are not yet very difficult to get on the first level, second level, third level, fourth level, very difficult. So before that, even you have good shine, when you die.
C'est difficile d'atteindre ces premier, deuxième et troisième, quatrième niveau de shamatha. Notre shamatha ne peut pas être comparé à cela. Nous, lorsque nous mourons, nous retombons dans l'agitation.
Bonjour, merci. Moi, la question, c'était comment peut émerger le processus de la soi de l'esprit qui, par essence, est vaste, clair et non-duel.
How does this dualism arise in a mind whose nature is quite different?
te marik pa de condition yung gyor
marik pa 당번에 마릭 되기요.
no
당번에 마릭 바 사신 동바티 자네 메나 간수 시주 자네 요 말다데 시야 치 요 말
맞아
셈사와렌도 셈시 동바렌도 시주 지도
no
곰량켄소 곰야 진도
no
데 자네 용야 요 말
나는서
사신 동바다 지다 메나
나는서
곰 자야 요 말 텐소 강가 칸이 시야 용그 말이 곰자는 쌈 투야 용 말자
나는서
다 쌈 투야 지다 칸이 시주 지다 다나 히 셈베 쌈 투주 지다 곰장켄소 곰자야 지도 데 코라네루로 유디
나는서
다데 당번에 말이 바래 데 말이 다데 말이 바데 가르치는 곳 수월을 저 제주 지기나 자댕게 말에도 공학기 연계 말에도 제주 지버라고 타요 말이다.
알았어.
제과요 말을 저 가라 선바 기보신 공조 대가들다.
알았어.
그 제주 맛있어.
L'origine de
in the beginning there was ignorance, but really you can't find a beginning to it. It is something that has no beginning. But the beginning of the chain of events is ignorance. How can we talk about wisdom or absence of wisdom or understanding? And the fact that it is even possible for us to be aware of this, it has to do with positive qualities of mind. Now, if you're looking for the beginning of where we went wrong, it's like, which one came first, the chicken or the egg? You'll never find an answer. There is no beginning to it. It's better not to worry too much about this question, because you'll never find any answer. It's better to meditate.
L'égarement, c'est comme rechercher l'origine, à savoir quel est le premier de l'œuf et de la poule. Vous ne trouverez jamais cette origine. Il vaut mieux juste que vous ne vous préoccupiez pas de cette question, puisque vous ne trouverez pas de réponse, que vous pratiquiez la méditation au lieu.
Yeah.
Rinpoche, so really practice, in order to really practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, so what I understood, we have to really have a good level of Shina, like you said.
Yes.
And in order to really have a good level of Shina, what I understood also from other teachings is that we really have to have renouncement, because if we practice with the 8 worldly dharmas, then we cannot really have a good result in Shina. Even if we do long retreat, the mind will not really be pacified. So in order to really have renouncement, so you really have to study a long time, we have to understand the 4 thoughts and really integrate them. And in order to study and integrate them, it also seems to take a long time. So I say this because I know many people for many, many years, and who try to do that, and I don't know anybody who can count easily until 21. I haven't met, maybe they don't say it, but I know many people who are involved since many years and they cannot do it. So I ask myself, in our modern society, for Westerners who learn the Dharma when they are maybe, if they are lucky, in their early 20s, they start to get interested in the Dharma, but very often it's even much later. And I ask myself, is it still possible for people like this?
Well, they say, well, you're right. So Western society is different, so not easy to get out of it, yes. But many of them do 3 years retreat in Labost, then you have time. So if you try to have time, you have time to do meditation. 3 years, 6 years are very good time. 3 years is very good for achieving good result of Shine, and as well as Platon meditation in 3 years. 3 years long enough. Of course, if you go into this long process of the achievement of Shine levels, such as what I described, that's the Mahayana. In Mahayana doctrine, they don't emphasize you to go that lean. You try to get certain level of Shine, and on top of that, then you do Lakon meditation like Mahamudra. So 3 years is good. Or, if you are not in the retreat, you can still carry on meditation. There are many people who are very successful doing meditation while you have busy works. Like, meditation is, first, you should know how to do meditation clearly, how to handle it, how to maintain it. That's good knowledge. The most important knowledge for the meditation is, yes, how to maintain it. And if any problem happens, how you handle it. So first you should learn. And then later, when you do meditation like horses are eating grass. Whenever you have time, you do it. Then you will be successful. Yes.
Est-ce que je dois traduire la question? Oui. D'accord. Donc la question c'était, donc vous aviez parlé, Rinpoche, que de l'importance de la méditation shamatha, et que, si j'ai bien compris, il est nécessaire pour pratiquer shamatha que nous ayons vraiment renoncer à l'existence conditionnée, sans quoi, pour développer Vipassana, le discernement, il faut s'appuyer sur Shamatha. Pour développer Shamatha, il faut s'appuyer sur le renoncement. Sans quoi, l'on sera préoccupé par les problèmes de la vie ordinaire. Et pour pouvoir renoncer, il nous faut nous appuyer sur les 4 pensées qui détournent de l'attachement au samsara. Et pour cela, il nous faut étudier longuement le dharma. Donc on peut se demander si c'est quelque chose encore possible à faire, puisque beaucoup d'entre nous rencontrons le dharma, peut-être certains d'entre nous quand on est jeune, mais beaucoup plus tard. Est-ce qu'on peut encore le faire en Occident, pratiquer le dharma et atteindre la réalisation? Personnellement, je n'ai encore pas rencontré une personne qui arrive à être concentré pendant 21 cycles de respiration. Donc, est-ce que c'est quelque chose que l'on peut en Occident encore réussir à faire? Donc, la réponse, c'est cela, la question. Oui. Et donc, la réponse de Rinpoche maintenant. En effet, dans la société occidentale, on peut penser que on a, de par les conditions, il est plus difficile d'être amené au dharma et de pouvoir pratiquer. Cependant, il y a la possibilité de faire des retraites, par exemple des retraites durant 3 ans, 6 ans. Ce sont là des durées extrêmement importantes et suffisantes pour pouvoir arriver à un degré de réalisation dans le shamatha. Évidemment, c'est pas nécessaire de suivre, d'atteindre tous les degrés de shamatha dont il est question, dont on a parlé ce matin. Dans la tradition du Mahayana, l'on donne l'importance d'atteindre un certain degré de shamatha, mais pas d'atteindre les degrés du sommet de l'existence, par exemple. Et lorsqu'on a atteint un degré suffisant de shamatha, ensuite l'on est invité à cultiver la méditation de vipassana, du discernement, tel que à travers la méditation du Mahamudra. Donc cela, là aussi, c'est pas nécessaire de faire ça toujours en retraite. On peut aussi pratiquer en dehors d'un cadre de retraite. Il y a beaucoup de personnes qui ont réussi à obtenir de très très bons résultats en dehors des cadres de retraite. Pour la méditation, évidemment, le plus important est de savoir comment il faut méditer. Comment est-ce que l'on médite? Ça, c'est une science qu'il nous faut nous acquérir pour celui qui veut méditer. Ensuite, il faut le mettre en application et essayer de méditer quand on peut, comme on peut, dans les conditions, les circonstances qui sont les nôtres. Il faut faire comme un cheval qui broute de l'herbe. Un cheval, dès qu'il a un moment, dès qu'il peut, il commence à brouter de l'herbe. De la même manière, dès qu'on a un moment, il faut méditer.
Thank you. Okay.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Merci, Rinpoche.